Welcome back to Huawei Routing and Switching Elite Training for HCIE. Today topic we are going to discuss on ISIS. Let's start our part 7.
Now to control our ISIS on the different area, we can use what we call the administrative tag. So this is a tagging method. Now in this example, I have 5 area. So we have area number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I have a router R1 here that require the R4 L1, R3 L1, and R2 L1. These are the information I want. Then the rest of this information I do not want to advertise to R1. So R1 do not want to receive other than these 3 router. Now what you can do over here is that you can configure the administrative tag, okay, on R2, R3, and R4. Now once you tag this prefix, this information will send to this guy, okay. So in L1, L2, you are going to import based on the admin tag. So those administrative tag that is conform to the criteria will link into router 1. So now you have the information only those that from R2, R3, and R4, and the rest will get filtered. Now for you to do this tag, please remember that the ISIS have to use a course style of white. Now this is mandatory because this is additional attribute that have to be enabled for the tag to be implemented successfully. Okay, so the next exercise I'm going to show you administrative tag. So under the router 3 ISIS, okay, so let me do a display this. I'm going to enable the administrative tag of 333 when router 3 advertise this to router 1 and router 2. So if I go to router 2, display ISIS LSDB with the verbose, as you can see that now I don't have any of the tag attached to it. Alright, so these are the default LSDB advertised by router 3. Now for us to configure the administrative tag, firstly we have to configure the course style, okay, and it have to be white. Alright, so once you enable, you notice that they will disconnect and reconnect back the appearing. So we have to do it on all. So course style white, okay, and course style white. Alright, that's good. So let's just check our appearing. Make sure that our appearing are good. So that's it. Alright, so our appearing is good. So let me show you one more time. So we have a course style white. And for us to inject the administrative tag, alright, so we are going to use a command called circuit default tag. And this is a 32-bit value. Let's say I'm going to use a value of 333. I'm going to use a level 2. Okay, that's it. So when router 3 advertise this advertisement to router 1 and router 2, is going to attach a administrative tag of 333. So let me go to router 2 and verify that that's true. Display ISIS LSDB verbose. Now you can see that the administrative tag is enabled. So on router 1 or router 2, we can base on the tag and we can configure some policy of filtering. Let's look into configuring basic ISIS. So in this lab, we are going to look into this new topology. Alright, so we have R1, R2, and R3 are connected through a switch. Okay, R3 and R4 are connected through the serial line. R3 and R5 serial line. 4 and 6 is using Ethernet. Okay, and behind here I have a 10 network. So let's look into the requirement. Now first requirement is to configure R1, R2, R3 as level 1 and configure R6 as a level 2 router. And we are going to set the system ID based on this requirement. And the second requirement is to advertise network segment of interface of ISIS area. Do not advertise the network segment. Okay, so let's look into the lab. So here is my topology. Okay, so I have all these router are connected through the hub, and this is under the network 47001, and I have router 6 under the network 47002. Alright, so for its first requirement, okay, so we are going to enable the ISIS, so we just need to use the ISIS. Okay, we are going to use the network entity 47001. So I'm going to use the system ID of 0001. Okay, so next we have to go into our interface. This is our G00. So we just set the ISIS enable. That's it. Okay, so we are going to enable on the R1 and R2. But remember, the requirement here is that we have to enable using the level 1. So in our ISIS, we have to use a command called is level. Okay, so we are going to use a level 1. That's the requirement. Okay, so display this. Okay, so I'm going to copy this to R2. Okay, so for R2, my system ID is 0002. Press enter. Interface gate 000. ISIS enable. Okay, that's it. So that's on R2. So on the R3, we are going to use the same command. Okay, but our system ID is 003. And on the router 3, we have to enable on 3 interfaces: gig 000, serial 100, and serial 101. So I go into the gig 00, interface gig 000, ISIS enable, interface serial 100, ISIS enable, and interface serial 101, ISIS enable. Okay, that's it. So if we do a display ISIS interface, you're able to see that these are the interfaces that I enable. Okay, so remember that I'm using the level 1 in the R1, R2, and R3. The question doesn't require me to do it on 4 and 5, so by default, if we never do anything, the default is level 1 and level 2. So let me go to router 4. So I'm going to do as a this is number 4. Okay, so I have to undo the IS level. Okay, so that when I look into it, so it will be using a default. So let me copy this. I'm going to do it on router 5. Okay, and the system is number 5. Then I have to enable on both the interfaces. I do it on serial 101, ISIS enable, and interface gig 002, ISIS enable. Just to recap back, display ISIS interface to verify. As you can see that my IS level is level 1, 2, okay, on both sides. Whereas if let's say I go back into the router 1, if I do a display ISIS interface, alright, as you can see that we have our R3 is supposed to be L1. Okay, later we are going to look into this because in our RS here we have IS level 1, and on R5, okay, so we never specify, and by default is level 1 and 2, so I have to enable on router 4 as well. So as you can see that on my router 4, I have not enabled any interfaces yet, so I need to go into the router 4 and gig 001, ISIS enable. Okay, let's have a look on the interface. There you go. Alright, so you can see that the neighbor just formed. Alright. Okay, so if I go into the router 3, let's have a look on my neighbor, display ISIS peer. Okay, that's good. Alright, so you can see that this is the evidence that router 3 is L1, and I have enabled that on both gig and serial interface. On the gig 0, I have 2 neighbor. Okay, and on the serial 100 and 101, you notice that I have the neighbor number 4, router 4, and neighbor AR router 5. Okay, alright, so lastly, we are going to do on the router 6. Okay, ISIS, our network here is 47.0.0.0.2. Okay, so we are going to use a 47.0.0.2. So this is another network. And then I'm going to go into the gig 001, ISIS enable, and interface gig 002, ISIS enable, and followed by gig 000. That's our LAN interface here. So ISIS enable. Okay. All right. So because that the requirement on the router 6 here, we are going to use the level 2. So if I go back into display current configuration, ISIS, you'll notice that we are using level 1 and 2. In fact, if I do a display ISIS peer, you'll notice that we are using a level 1 and 2. So requirement by the question mentioned that we need to just purely using L2. So let me go back to ISIS. I'm going to use the IS level 2. Okay, I'm going to use level 2, enter. Okay, there you go. So they disconnect and reconnect back the peer. Let me verify one more time. Display ISIS peer. Now we have a level 2. Let's look into the next requirement. So in this exercise, we have two requirements here. First, we have to ensure that no DIS is elected between R4 and R5, R4 and R6, or between R5 and R6. So 5 and 6, we do not have any election. So 4, 5, and 5, 6, we do not have any election. Okay, whereas ensure that R1, R2, R3 are in the same network and elected R3 as the DRS. So here we do have a DRS, but I need the R3 as a DRS. Configure the priority that are as small as possible for R1 and R2 to participate in the DRS. Now the possible solution for here is that the first solution, no DRS is elected. Now in ISIS we only have two ISIS type, which is P2P or point-to-point, or using a broadcast. So since point-to-point do not have any DRS, we are going to change our circuit type to point-to-point. Okay, for R4, R6, and R5, R6. On the second solution, we are going to configure the R3 as our DRS, and we have to configure the priority as small as possible. So R1 and R2, we are going to configure the priority to become 0. Alright, let's do that. Okay, so let's check our router 6 here. Let's do a display ISIS interface. Okay, so you can see that R6 is not the DIS for both the interfaces. If I go to R4, okay, so let's do a display ISIS interface, and you can see that the gig 001 R4 is a DRS. Now remember the requirement said that we do not want to have any DRS. So first we need to go to the interface of gig 001. We are going to use a command called ISIS circuit type. Okay, so we have a default here is a broadcast, so we are going to change to point-to-point. Okay, so this is a command that we are going to use, so I just copy that. Alright, so let me do a verification. This is a point-to-point display ISIS interface on my gig 001. You can see that I do not have any DIS anymore. Okay, neither that on the serial 100 because there's a serial interface. So I need to go into R5. Okay, so we are going to do the same thing. I need to go to the interface gig 002, which is on this interface, and I'm going to use a IS circuit type point-to-point, and finally I need to go to R6. In the interface gig 001, I'm going to use the point-to-point. and I go to the interface gate 002. I will also use the IS circuit type point-to-point. Okay, so just to do one more verification, display ISIS interface. So you can see that both the R4 and R5 do not participate in the election of DIS. Okay, so that's the first requirement. Now, second requirement is to enable R1 and R2 to have the lowest priority ever, and R3 to become the DRS. So if I go into the R3 display ISIS interface, okay, the one that is on the gate 00, you can see that L1 is a DRS. Okay, on R1, sorry, this is an R3. Okay, on R3, R3 is a DRS for level 1. Okay, you can see that DRS is a yes. So on R1, we are going to configure based on the requirement is to enable the lowest priority. So firstly, we need to go into the gate 00. We are going to use the interface called ISIS DIS priority. Okay, the lowest is 0, the highest is 127, so I'm going to use a 0. And on router 2, I'll do the same thing, interface gate 00. So I'm going to use the IS DIS priority 0. Okay, so just to verify this, display ISIS interface. So you can see that I'm not the DIS. R3 is the DIS as earlier on that I shown you. Okay, so this is the solution for how you can actually change not to become a DIS by using point-to-point and putting yourself as a DIS, okay, by changing the priority, or not making yourself as DIS by using the lowest priority, which is 0.
Thanks for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel.